thank you very much. Good afternoon. You're certainly the bravest of the braves, and we thank you for that. We are going to talk about opportunities in France, and most precisely, opportunities in small business lending. We have here 3 companies that represent, in fact, 2/3 of the French SME lending market. So let me, I'm handing over to you to introduce yourself, Laurent.
Yes, Laurent de Bernède, I'm COO and co-founder of Credit.fr. We're an SME marketplace providing 2, 3, 4, and 5-year loans to small businesses in France. We started operating at the end of March 2015, so a bit over a year and a half. And we are growing steadily thanks to a good regulatory environment and a buoyant sector.
Nicolas?
Good afternoon, I'm Nicolas Lesur. I'm the founder and CEO of Unilend. We are a marketplace lender dedicated to small businesses. We offer loans from 3 months to 60 months, to very small companies, generally below 2 million euros. And we have begun our operation nearly 3 years ago, in November 2013. So we are the pioneer in a way of that market in France.
And I'm Patrick de Nonneville. I'm the COO of Lendix. So just like the others, we are a small business lender. We started operating in April 2015, and we currently originate about 5-6 million euros of loans a month. Our loan size tends to be a bit larger than the other platform. We focused on companies with a slightly larger size, but we also start our loans at 30,000 euros.
Thank you. So I would like to start first to apologize Cèdric Teissier from Finexkap, who is in the online factoring business, because he's stuck in traffic and it's not clear that he will be able to make it. I apologize for that, but it will give us more time to talk about SME lending in France at large. So the first thing that I would like to address is the general environment. We have in France quite a lively, dynamic scene. When Peter Renton came to Paris in July, he called the lending scene a vibrant scene. And the reason is that because we have quite a strong ecosystem, and I will hand the floor to Nicolas, who is the head of the French Crowdfunding Association, to talk about the current state of regulation of crowdlending in France.
Yeah, thank you, Therese. Actually, we have this vibrant scene because of favorable regulatory environments. Also because I think VCs are backing the platforms in France quite largely, but that's not the topic. I'm aware of that. So the regulation is very important for us in France because, as you may be aware of, France is traditionally a country where the banking monopoly is very strong, and 2 or 3 years ago, if you did credits more than once a year, you could go to jail. So it was quite necessary to have this kind of a regulation. Our association, Financement Participatif France, was at the forefront of the lobbying for providing this new regulation in 2013. It came alive on the 1st of October 2014, the first wave of that regulation, and basically dedicated to allow retail investors to lend directly to basically companies. So this is a status which is named intermédiaire en financement participatif, peer-to-peer lender intermediaries, if you like, which allows retail people to lend up to 1,000 euros into any company loans issued or originated by those IFPs. This was the first step of the regulation, which had a consequence in the market because many of the platforms came alive at that moment, including you and you. And now we've come through the second wave of the regulation, allowing institutional investors and companies to lend in that market with the regulation around what we call the mini-bon, Mini-bonds are like promissory notes. They are regulated by the AMF, whereas the first status is regulated by the Banque de France, and it allows anyone which is a holding or a fund to lend by buying these mini-bonds issued by the companies. So this is the main framework. I'm sure that it will evolve constantly over the years as we are in the financial world, but I think the two pillars are in place to make us alive.
And to summarize this change, it will really be a major change because companies will be able to invest, not only retail investors.
Yes, companies are now entitled to invest, funds are entitled to invest also, and the main thing is, for me, is that we have a very strong support from the government, from the public bodies, from the Banque de France and the AMF, which is key to the success of the industry in France, which is, as many of you are aware of, quite a regulated country. So that there are very positive signals.
Laurent, do you have a comment on
Yes, well, this what this amounts to is a favorable environment for our platforms to evolve and to grow, as well as a favorable environment for building confidence, which is key. And this translates into a strong move that we currently see in France from institutional investors wanting to come into the platforms. So all the platforms are gearing up for fast growth by creating debt funds and vehicles to allow ourselves at Credit.fr, we're about to launch a fund by year-end to allow for institutional investors to come in and lend in a much easier fashion than if they would lend directly on the platform. So that's one thing, institutional money coming in. Another factor and another immediate effect is, like you said, the VC money coming in. The fact that it's regulated and it's moving into a favorable direction, evolving quickly over the years, including innovation which came into law now for us to use the blockchain as a ledger for our new debt titles that are coming into effect. So this is all moving in the right direction, making VCs very confident that this will not be stopped by either over-regulation or under-regulation. So this is very good. And the third effect, I would say, is more geared to the confidence of the general public and individual savings. You may know, but France has a very high rate of individual savings. About 15.5% of income is being saved by French people, which is huge. It amounts to about 10,000 billion euros of savings invested in many different vehicles, very little of which has come so far to our platforms, but this is about to change. And the reason why I say this is we're seeing partnerships being developed between banks, retail banks, and platforms, insurance companies and platforms, either funding through these vehicles or allowing distribution agreements to come into play. So we just launched a month ago a major partnership with Hello Bank, which is the online distribution arm of BNP Paribas, 100% owned subsidiary. And this basically allows individual savings to come directly onto our platform. So these are three big moves, and that shows that we have a very favorable environment to grow into.
And we just mentioned that, in fact, what is not so well known is that the French market is post-regulation, post-2014. So most platforms started really to operate in 2015, and that is the case of Lendix, which has started less than 2 years ago and has grown at quite a substantial pace.
We did our first loan in April 2015, so it's effectively very new, as it is for all of us. I think the French platforms have a really unique environment in Europe. You already pointed to the regulatory environment. there is also an involvement of institutional investors, which is quite frankly astonishing compared to how young the market is. So if I can speak about the example of Lendix, we started Lendix initially with in mind the fact that this needed to be a market that could be accessible by retail investors and by institutions. So we have retail investors that come onto the platform directly and they can select which loans they want to lend to. And we have a fund that comes and co-lends. So it's not like all loans go to institution and part loans go to the retail. Everybody lends to the same companies. And from day one, we had about 35% of the money coming on the platform came from institutions, and it's still the case today. So our first fund was 26 million euros. It's fully invested now, and we're raising our second fund, which is already starting to land on the platform, and which is today roughly at 55 million euros, and it's going to reach probably 75. And if you look at the list of investors that we have on that fund, it's insurance companies, it's family offices, it's traditionally fairly cautious investors. So why do they come so early into an asset class which is completely new to them via actors such as ourselves, which are so completely new? I think there's several reasons. Regulation is one of them, for sure. They see the regulation as being a huge protection that they have. If you looked at Cormac McLeish's excellent talk yesterday, that was one of the main points that he made about what protects investors when they deal with the platform. So we already have that. We already have insurance requirements, which I don't think any other countries in Europe have. Mm-hmm. And actually, platforms in France need to have professional insurance. And the third aspect, and which he hasn't mentioned yet, is a lot of the platforms are working towards having some form of alignment of interest with their investors. So the way we did it in Lendix is the management of Lendix via the fund lends to every single loan that goes on the platform. And so if you have all these aspects, effectively you create some kind of environment where large institutions, cautious, CNP Insurance, fifth largest insurer in Europe, they don't go into a platform just like this. The due diligence is huge. But they take comfort in those factors, and that gives them the interest and the ability to go and do those due diligence. And I think it's a hugely positive factor for the whole market. Retail investors are very, very happy to have institutions lending with them because effectively they realize that they're not getting what nobody else wants. They're also getting something that savvy investors, smart investors want to invest in.
And you've been among the platforms that are the recipient of funding from Prêtons Ensemble, which is a major fund being launched by insurance companies. Can you say a few words about?
Yeah, so one of the leaders in the precursors in lending to platforms was a company called Eiffel. Etienne Boyot and Jean-Benoît
I've spoken on several.
On several, and they've basically done a huge favor to the whole market by evangelizing about the great asset that is marketplace lending, and convincing tier one investors, insurance companies, to invest via a fund that they created. And that fund, which is called Prêtons Ensemble, let's lend together, I guess, is effectively doing the due diligence for the institutional investors and acts as an access to the platform. So they're investing in the Lendix fund, in which we have them as investors. We also have other investors who, in that case, have done due diligence on Lendix directly themselves.
Nicolas, back to you. You are the largest lending platform for retail investors. You have more than 11,000 members, yet you're also going to look into institutional investments, and you recently made a deal with a fund. Can you tell us more on that?
You're right. We have 35,000 members, but 11 of them are active lenders. But
thank you.
Thank you. So that was our strategy since the beginning to build a strong community of retail investors, to raise the awareness of the general public. But since the beginning, we had in mind this necessity of this need of the diversification of our funding. So 1.5 years ago, we had the first institutional investor coming into the platform, which was Groupama Bank, which is lending on the loans on the platform. And now we've welcomed a new shareholder, which name is New Alpha, this summer. We will help us to expand through the institutional world. I think that what they found with what we do, it's the same as you mentioned before. But I mean, we are 3 years old, so it's a time when your track record begins to be reliable, and the volumes begins to be significant to deploy your capital. So that this is a perfect time frame to go through this world of investors, which is easier because of this environment where the place in its entirety is mobilized to go to favor the funding of those platforms by the institutional investors. Yes.
You talked about track record. What do you do to attract the borrowers, to attract the right borrowers? You know, how do you make sure that you're not getting only the rejects of the banks? Maybe we want to start with you, Laurent.
Yes, we actually have a good track record, and since the beginning of the inception of the platform, we decided that we needed to be very, very selective and very careful. So we've had over 21,000 requests for loans for 1.3 billion euros, and we funded 100 projects. So we're at 0.5% of funding. We're extremely selective. We have 0 default, 0 late payments so far, which works. So we have a limited production. We're going slowly, but surely. And our selection process is partly, I would say, we have a scoring software that allows us to eliminate a vast majority of the requests. You can come in and in 9 seconds, less than, I would say, 5 seconds, you'd have a yes-no answer. If it's a yes, we move into a semi-automatic process and then a manual process to evaluate these very small companies. The average company on our platform, the business is 9 people, 9 years old, less than 1 million euros of turnover. So it's really small. And it's tough to evaluate these types of companies that are disseminated throughout France and on any sector. What else can I say?
I think, selectivity is obviously, our numbers are pretty similar. We've had, I think, 1.7 billion worth of demand, and we've, financed 41 million euros worth of loan. Our default rate is 17 basis points. The ability to be very selective is key. We also have excellent information. The regulation gives us access to the Banque de France registry, where basically we can compare our findings on the credit with what all the banks in France share. And not only can we read that, but we can write to that. If a company doesn't pay us, we make a mark in the Banque de France registry, and it gives their access to banking credit very difficult. And that's a huge incentive to pay. And that's also almost as important as the credit analysis is, what do you do when they stop paying you? I think it's a key aspect of what the platforms do, and it's what's going to be on the track record over many years.
In these conditions, that with this good access to information, how do you explain that the banks are not serving those customers? Nicolas, how do you explain?
The key thing is that in France there is no problem of credit access for investment in material with a guarantee. Banks are lending at very low rates. It's just boring. It takes time, but you have this access. The market we are addressing there are small companies. Few of them are industry, so you don't buy a machine or you don't buy your real estate every 6 months, but you have intangible asset needs. And for those needs, which includes renewing your website, working capital, refurbishment, and so on, you don't have this easy access to financing from the bank because they cannot take guarantee. And they cannot refinance those loans that they grant to you to the central bank. So it's a cost for them with low revenue in front, cost of capital, cost of operation, with very few revenues in front. So this explains why on those needs, those companies are underserved. And I'm happy to see a new source of funding, which is a complement from the investment perspective on the overdraft. So this kind of a midterm unsecured loan is very efficient on the market. Just one thing, we just serve the same clients at the bank, but not for the same needs.
Right. Good.
And definitely not in the same way, with all due respect to the excellent job that the banks do.
Yeah, better customer experience.
Yeah, I would add to that just a quick mention. In 60% of the cases on our platform, we are co-financing a larger need together with a bank, meaning that for 300,000 euro investment project, the bank will take 200,000. There's going to be maybe a 0% loan by a credit insured loan. Easy access to the company for 25,000, and we'll provide 75,000 totally unsecured in a matter of days. Within 5 days, you get your money, and this is a great help for small businesses who have investment projects. So we're basically bringing new money complementary to what the bank can provide, new money into the economy. And this is a big issue that we feel strongly backed by politicians in France. The executive and the government has realized this, that attracting savings into and pouring it into the local economy is key to economic growth in France.
Patrick, do you have something to add to?
No, I think there's many different reasons why SMEs come to platforms, and the ease, the convenience, I think, should not be underestimated. It's true we don't finance the same things at the bank, but our experience, we have borrowers who come to us the first time because they have a slightly specific situation that the bank cannot do. The next time they want to borrow, they don't even ask their bank, because it's so much easier to just do it on the platform. In terms of process, in terms of doing everything online, in terms of responsiveness, etc.
How long would the process on average last?
So in the bank, the official numbers is it's 10 days, but that's 10 days from the time where every single document has been provided. So the actual number is more like a month and a half. When we started Lendix, we were giving firm answers in 7 days. We've now shortened that to 48 hours thanks to improvements in our processes. And we're going to be doing 24 hours next year. So it's a big difference. The banks, in theory, can do that as well. But in practice, it's much more difficult.
Now let's take the remaining minutes to talk about your development plans. We start with Laurent. What are you looking at? In which directions are you going?
So we're gearing up to attract institutional money onto the platform, which requires, of course, technical investment. We're also growing these distribution partnerships heavily with banks, starting with Hello Bank. But
you talked to me about brokerage firms.
And we're signing a very large number of deals, in the hundreds actually, with brokers, credit brokers. This is a business that has been growing in France. They used to fund a lot of real estate loans, and now they're moving very quickly into small business loans. And so we're working with this indirect distribution channel to funnel borrowers onto the platform, and it's working well.
Nicolas?
Well, I've already said one of our next move is to expand the footprint of the institutional investors in the platform, and we have other developments of course, under the shelf. But I'm sorry, but I'm not so at ease to explain things that are not done. So maybe for another time, but it's a hard work.
And Lendix, I think you are expanding internationally.
Well, I mean, yeah, we are. So we're opening Spain. The team is there, and we should be doing our first loans any day now. And Italy as well. We've been starting to build a team in Milan. You know, if I have to make a guess, Q1 2017 is when we're going to start operating. Because there's a slight thing in the fund that we have created, is that the format of it basically allows us to lend in any country in Europe, which is quite new. I mean, it's a completely new format that was created just at the end of 2015, but which I think has fantastic applications for all platforms in Europe. And we were the first ones to get an agreement for that type of fund, and we very much intend to put that to good use.
You told me once that you have grown faster than Funding Circle at its beginnings. Is that?
It's still true, but you know, I mean, I think the trick is going to be being able to grow as fast as them for the next 5 years, and that's a huge challenge, given how well they've done. So, it's look. the truth is we're doing this 5 years after the US or even longer for the UK. There are some things that we do not need to reinvent. I mean, that's why we started with also having institutional money on Lendix, because we looked at the UK and the US and we knew this was what we would end up with. So let's start with that anyway. And there's plenty of other things. So clearly for us, having competitors internationally, but also domestically, who do well and is I think is a plus. We need to grow the market. It's not taking market share from each other.
So what would help you most to happen in the French market or in Europe at large? Is there one thing that you would like to see happen? Maybe Britain going back on the Brexit, or what is your dream?
The first one is stability. I mean, we're lucky stability of the regulation. So we're lucky we have some regulation. It's imperfect, but we need to have that regulation stay stable so we can develop within the boundaries that have been set to us. I think that's the first thing. After that, the French market, I mean, you were talking about the huge amount of savings that the French do. Almost all of it is tax optimized. So some form of tax optimization like the UK has allowed would be obviously a game changer.
In parenthesis, one has to say maybe not everybody knows that the retail investors have gone in the past few years through an incredible times of fiscal instability. The rules were changing every second day. Taxes were raised and lowered and this and that. So it's been quite tough from that perspective.
It doesn't encourage investment.
It doesn't encourage investment, but we're definitely seeing a move from early adopters to mainstream. And this is, I mean, the illustration of this is that the banks are finally putting a crowdlending tab on their website and directing users to platforms. And we're also seeing aggregators now being built in a significant way, which provides more visibility to platforms for the general public. So this is also a good move that hopefully will keep on increasing in 2017.
And I don't want to give the wrong impression. I think we're also seeing the government realizing that fiscal stability is very important to businesses. Nicolas, should we leave you the final word?
No, I don't know. I mean, I think that on the European level, the things are flourishing everywhere. And probably the next move will be cross-border platforms. I mean, the issue is not what is expected. I mean, the issue is not legal. The issue is not technical. I mean, for us, for our perspective, we are ready to launch to Italy. The only thing that we lack is a reliable team about origination and scoring. So I mean, we don't need any regulation or new mainframe from the European Union to allow us to work. We could work. So the idea is that we are building businesses for the long term. We have time in front of us because we are well funded. So we'll build them in accordance, having in mind that in credit area, I mean, cautiousness is also a good asset.
Okay, that will be the final word then. Thank you very much to the panelists, and thank you for your audience.